Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this presentation about creating and maintaining scenic views in the Hudson River Valley. We'll begin with introductions of the project partners and team members, then provide an overview of the work that we have done together over the past year and a half. We'll provide an overview of the handbook that's been developed to provide landowners with guidance on creating and maintaining views. And finally, we will show best management principles put into practice through demonstration projects. Funding for this project was provided by the New York State Environmental Protection Fund and administered by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program in partnership with NUIPIC. NUIPIC is a regional commission that helps states of the Northeast preserve and advance water quality, working with professionals to collaborate on water, wastewater, and environmental science challenges. The Hudson River Estuary Program helps people enjoy, protect, and revitalize the Hudson River and its valley. The program's approach includes research, education, training, and natural resource conservation and community planning assistance. Saratoga Associates, landscape architects, engineers, and planners, partnered with SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry to develop this series of ecologically friendly best management practices that were identified through research into existing visual and ecological conditions along the Hudson River. Now, for those of us presenting this information to you, my name is Emily Gardner. I'm a landscape designer and community planner with Saratoga Associates based in Saratoga Springs, New York. I collaborated on this project with two of my colleagues, Matthew Allen, a firm principal, and a landscape architect who specializes in visual assessment and scenic resource management, and George Turner, a landscape designer and certified arborist.
Good morning. My name is Robin Hoffman. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Landscape Architecture at SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. I worked on the project with respect to the guidebook and developing methods for view creation. And I also want to give credit to Carolyn Horrigan, an ESF graduate student and a Saratoga Associates intern who worked on this project as part of her capstone project for her master's work.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Fran Dunwell, Hudson River Estuary Coordinator for New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and allow her to say a few words.
Hello, I'm Fran Dunwell, Hudson River Estuary Coordinator. Our program, the Hudson River Estuary Program in New York State DEC, was organized to help people enjoy and conserve the Hudson River and its valley. We've created this handbook because the Hudson Valley has world-famous scenery. It has an incredible sense of place, and it reflects a legacy of landscape design decisions that go back to Andrew Jackson Downing in the 19th century. Today, the principles espoused by Downing still apply to use nature, design with nature, and to think about the decisions that we make in terms of how they interact with nature. So this handbook is designed to help people create ecologically sound river vistas, follow the 19th century naturalistic principles, and also to continue to define the region's character by following those principles.
Thank you, Fran. And while we've introduced our primary project partners and staff, we really didn't do this work alone. In fact, we had a large group of stakeholders, including representatives from state agencies, conservation organizations, land trusts, friends groups, and historic properties, educators, design professionals. You can see a list here that just names some of the stakeholders who were part of our team. Their role was to provide guidance and feedback. They shared their expertise, and we thank them for their invaluable support of this project. Next, we'll get into an overview of the project. The Hudson River Valley landscape has a very strong identity based on its scenery. It's long been recognized for the river itself, the hills, the mountains, the forests, the farms. There are a number of unique habitats right alongside cities and towns that line its banks. The features of the valley have drawn artists, settlers, tourists, and they continue to be a source of inspiration for both locals and visitors. We have a mix of natural and working landscapes. Some of the views that we've come to recognize were formed from clearing that was associated historically with agriculture and industry. And as time went on, we began to start to design these landscapes. Designers such as Andrew Jackson Downing, Calvert Vaux, Frederick Law Olmsted have all contributed to what we come to know and recognize as the scenery of the Hudson River Valley. This project recognizes the principles that influence the valley's history while charting a path forward to develop aesthetic improvements in a way that balances ecology and aesthetics in a way that recognizes the unique landscape. The purpose of the handbook that was developed was aimed to assist parks and historic sites and other property owners along the Hudson River, work to establish best practices for view creation and maintenance, for protection and enhancement of the habitat and the natural areas throughout the valley, and also to provide education and outreach. It was really the goal in developing the handbook and also providing these demonstration projects at sites that were accessible to the public so that we could share the principles learned and see them put into practice. Goals and objectives for the handbook were to really recognize the value and importance of a view, and also the significance of the various habitats and the importance of water quality. Some views are historical or within historical landscapes, and it's important to recognize and maintain that character when it's appropriate. The ultimate goals of this project were to share what we've learned through the handbook, through this presentation, and putting them into practice through the demonstration projects in order to guide the implementation of future view creation. There are a number of factors to consider in a project like this one, some of which we've already touched on. There are projects that might be considered living aspects, the flora, the fauna, invasive species, sensitive species, important habitats, soils and erosion, water quality, and there are also historical aspects, how these iconic views came to be, what influenced them, the artists and designers, and additionally, there are community aspects, whether it's something related to a municipality, to the neighbors of a site, to those who might be out recreating and getting a view from their boat or a hiking trail, or those who might just be passing by on a road or train. All of these aspects can contribute to the creation and maintenance and might be ways to share knowledge as well. The project study area was long. Essentially, the entire portion of the Hudson River below the Federal Dam in Troy. It's an area of about 140 miles, considered locations on both shores. And we thought about the views from the land to the river and also back from the river to the land. In some cases, that might be boat traffic, or it might be someone on an Amtrak train taking a trip, or it might be a view from one shore to the other. So this is a very large project area. Characteristics of the river change. There are differences in the level of development. We also have tidal portions of the river, which increase the unique habitat areas, such as tidal wetlands. Goals in developing the handbook were really to assist property owners along the Hudson River in the preservation, restoration, and enhancement of the landscape. We hoped to provide clear, concise, highly illustrative handbook for ease of use and for understanding, but we wanted to share best practices for creating views, protecting and enhancing the habitat, and making sure that these lessons learned were straightforward, provided ease of implementation, and were very clear to understand. Our first step was looking into some background research to inform the recommendations we would make. Our research began with a review of historical perspectives. We were looking to understand the cultural importance of view creation and landscape design in the Hudson Valley. In the 19th century, Americans were just beginning to understand their natural landscape, and the Hudson River Valley was a source of a new relationship with the natural world. You might be aware of a new style of painting that began to develop through this landscape and the group of artists that would later become known as the Hudson River School. You see on the left side of the slide there a painting by Thomas Cole, a member of this school of painting, and also Frederick Church's Olana, which is located along the Hudson River. The works of these artists had an air of romanticism, an idea of discovery, exploration, settlement, and it was really one of the early means that shared imagery of the Hudson River Valley. At the center of the slide, you see an image of Andrew Jackson Downing. He was a resident of the Hudson River Valley, a nationally renowned author on landscape design, and also a business partner of renowned park designer Calvert Vaux. Downing, in his writings, was one of the early figures to develop the idea of designing the landscape. He was working to adapt some English principles to North America, and he began to identify the beautiful and the picturesque, which you see some images on the right-hand side of the slide there. The beautiful was often described as more refined and balanced, depicting symmetry and gently flowing lines, while the picturesque may incorporate some elements of irregularity, but could still be a designed scene. Downing and other landscape designers of his day also thought about how someone might move through a landscape. They proposed creating a variety of visual experiences from different vantage points on a property, maybe a glimpse of a river here, a meadow there, an accent tree, rocks, or a water feature. And these are some of the elements that we still see in views today. In addition to history, our research included the review of a number of case studies. We were looking to identify what had been done elsewhere, what worked well, what maybe didn't work so well or might not be well suited to the Hudson River Valley, and also looking at the short and long-term impacts of vegetative clearing and maintenance, what was considered in regard to aesthetics or to the environment, and what could we apply to the Hudson River Valley. This led us to begin to develop our principles for the creation and protection of viewsheds. So what was done elsewhere? You see on your screen a number of case studies that we reviewed to learn and to determine what might be relevant to the Hudson River Valley. And while the specific habitats and geography of each location vary, there are certain principles that can still be applied, types of views, how they were created, how design alternatives might be developed, general guidelines for development and the environment, and the influence of context, habitat, and cultural values. Also, when considering the Hudson River Valley and its habitat, there are a number of species of special consideration. These are just some of the species to think about when working within the valley. Whether you're working close to the shoreline, you might encounter some of the fish species or aquatic plants, or near a wetland. You might be in an upland meadow setting where birds and dragonflies and other insects might be present, or might be transitioning into a forested area and need to consider some of the other bird and bat species. Some of these species, worth noting, also have regulations in place to protect them, so it's important to know what species could be present on a site. And while some species are prioritized for protection, others have been identified as invasives. So they can outcompete native species, they can change the character of a landscape and potentially jeopardize some of the important habitats. So here are just a few examples of species that are considered invasive and you might encounter within the valley. As I had mentioned previously, the Hudson River is actually tidal below the dam in Troy, which contributes to some unique habitats that might be encountered. We've included a few examples here. Wetlands, tidal portions that are still freshwater. There is even saltwater if you're further south. And In the upland situations, there are grasslands, meadows, and large forests, and all of these can be very important to the context of the landscape that you might be working within. Finally, in our research aspects, we're looking at different types of views. Here are just a couple of examples. The image on the left was actually included in some guidance in the Lake George case study for creation of a keyhole view. While on the right, you see an example of a layered view created within the Hudson River Valley. So just notice that in both of these, trees are left close to the shoreline, but they don't impede the view. So we noted that as an example of best practice. And this can be done for habitat considerations, water quality preservation, erosion prevention, or slope stabilization. All of these elements are further explored in the guidance handbook, which will be discussed in the next segment.